We've been dealing with 7th chords, and I showed you how to find 7th chords that are built on each note of the major scale and the minor scale. And then I showed you some chord progressions that use all those 7th chords that are contained within a certain key. Or something like this. Or we can change this to a G7 and so on. And I should mention some of the altered chords that might show up as you're dealing with 7th chords, and these require the use of accidentals. So for example, we could start with a G7 chord, and by raising the 5th, we end up with G. You can call it G plus 7 if you like. Or you can lower the 5th and you end up with G7 flat 5, which can be written G7 minus 5. And in the minor keys, you might have a C minor 7 chord. And if you raise the 7th, you have C minor major 7th. You may be familiar with this chord, or this chord quality, if you like, from previous videos. You can also take the chord, 7th chord built on the 7th note of the natural minor scale and raise the root, and now you end up with a straight diminished chord. So this would be B diminished, or you can call it B diminished 7th. To become fluent in the use of these chords, it's helpful to practice groups of chords or chord progressions, and then understand how these chords move from one chord to another. Now, the movement of these chords is mainly governed by the relationship of the chord roots. In other words, you're starting with a chord, it has a root, and then when that root moves to another root, the chord moves as well. So the most common kind of chord progression is by a root movement of a 5th going down or a 4th going up. So for example, from C down to F, or from C up to F. And so if we use the chord that's built on C, C major 7, the root goes down to F, the chord becomes F major 7. And so we have this chord progression. If we start on G7, the root can go down to C, or it can go up also to C. Down a 5th, up a 4th. If you have a continuous movement of descending 5ths, that's called the circle of 5ths, and we've covered this in other videos. So, for example, if we start here on C and keep going down by a 5th, and then it finally leads us all the way back to C. We go all the way around the circle. But you can also have a circle of 5ths movement that remains in one key. And this is known as a diatonic circle of 5ths. So for example, in the key of C, the progression would be C, F, B, E. Notice how the bass keeps going down by a 5th. I have to go move back up here because I'm going to run out of keys. And then it goes to D, stays on G, and then it goes back to C. So that's a diatonic circle of 5ths. And you may remember that I introduced that progression in an earlier video when we were talking about 7th chords. And so the diatonic circle of fifths touches on all the chords in a given key. And it includes many typical chord progressions within itself. You'll hear these chord progressions popping up in songs. Like, for example, if I play the opening of Autumn Leaves. Play it up here and watch where the bass goes. Starts on F, goes down a fifth, goes down a fifth, down a fifth, comes up a fourth, and goes down again. And we've worked our way through all the 7th chords found in the key of C minor. Isn't that interesting? So this circle of fifths exercise that I'm going to play for you makes use of open voicing in the right hand, partly open, and the chord roots are in the left hand. So we start out with C major 7, the root comes up a fourth, and then it goes down a fifth, and it alternates now between fourths and fifths. Down a fifth, up a fourth, down a fifth, up a fourth. In fact, we can keep going. Down a fifth, up a fourth, down, up a fourth, down, up, down. So you should practice this chord progression in every key. So if we take it and let's put it in F. So the task for you now is to play this diatonic circle of fifths chord progression in all the major keys. I would suggest that you practice this chord progression in the minor keys as well. So let's take A minor, for example. And you can keep going. You'll begin to understand how this works when you begin hearing these progressions in songs that you're playing. In fact, a fun thing that you can do with this now is use different rhythms when you're playing these progressions. For example, if you're playing something in the key of C major with the 7th chord progression, you can play different rhythms. Or you can play something a little simpler. Or you can play arpeggios. And then, of course, you could transpose it to other keys. So here's the same thing in the key of F major. Now we want to get the left hand involved too. So we can use like a stride piano type thing. Here's what it sounds like in the key of F. Now your left hand may not be used to doing this much work, so you may have to practice it very slowly, and that's okay. It's going to give you a chance to become very familiar with all of these 7th chords. And always pay attention to where the root is going. You're playing root, chord, so it went down a fifth, and then goes back up a fourth, down a fifth, up a fourth, down a fifth, up a fourth, down a fifth. Anyway, this will give you a lot to play around with, and you will begin to notice these progressions popping up in songs that you enjoy playing. And so what we're going to do in future videos is we'll take a song and analyze it, and I'll show you where these progressions pop up in those songs. I've already shown you one with the song Autumn Leaves. Very, very popular. And it's a great way to create chord progressions using these particular types of movements of the root and how these chords relate to one another. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those in the comment section below. You can support my channel by subscribing. That always helps the channel. And you can also support me on Patreon. I will leave the links below. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you in the next one.